was actually when I was first starting out and I was only about like 8 weeks pregnant. I was dumpster diving with the freegans in the streets of New York City. They like go through dumpsters at night and find food and beauty products and all of these things. And then it culminates in a feast. It was definitely like the wildest, exciting, and kind of disgusting experience I've ever.
Bethany Braun-Silva.
Bethany Braun-Silva is here.
Parenting expert and GMA e-commerce reporter.
Motherhood has taught me to be so accepting and open of my children exactly how they are. And we know as parents, like that can change from day to day, minute to minute.
Minute to minute.
Right. So just really to be patient, meet them where they're at, and to be flexible within that as well. Free yourself of whatever it is that might be holding you back, a relationship, your own inner self-talk, your doubts, and try working towards a feeling of freedom so that you can serve yourself and serve the world.
Isn't it interesting how women carry this burden of shame?
I carried shame around my disease, but then ultimately, like in the bigger picture, is like you spend so much time like feeling unworthy and embarrassed and ashamed of stuff that sometimes you can't even control. But what I really think I would do all over again is...
Hi, Bethany. Welcome to All Over Again podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so excited. Ever since I saw you at that Hey Mama event, I knew you had to hang with me.
I agree. It feels like very aligned that I'm here talking with you right now.
You're an author and a journalist and a mom. What is the strangest topic or interview that you've had in your journalism career?
It was actually when I was first starting out. My story kind of goes that I was pregnant. My sort of like birthed my passions and a child, right? Like at the same time. And at the time I was very, very early in my pregnancy and working for a media agency. So these are kind of agencies that sell these TLC stories, right? Really kind of human interest stories with a bit of like a tabloid spin. And so I was dumpster diving with the freegans is what they're called, out in Rockaway. And I was only about like 8 weeks pregnant. So that you can imagine that was quite the experience. So what they do is they like go through dumpsters at night in the streets of New York City and find food and like beauty products and all of these things. And then it culminates in a feast. And now this was like back in 2011. So I was covering it completely as a journalist, didn't partake in any of the dumpster diving activities, but it was definitely like the wildest experience I've ever had as a journalist. Got to write about it, it was published in like the New York Post. It was so exciting. It was one of my first assignments, and I was just thrown into the most exciting and kind of disgusting experience I've ever.
Are the freegans still a thing?
I think that it is still a thing. So freegans, I think, is like what they call themselves in Europe and maybe Great Britain specifically, but here I think it's pretty much just like dumpster divers, and it really has like an eco twist on it, right? So they're doing it because of all the waste and trying to like conserve, or minimize that waste and however they can do. Again,
I think there needs to be a part two, especially because I think of sanitary conditions, and
Absolutely.
I think, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So, and I think like for me, it was especially interesting because I was so pregnant and so nauseous already and having to kind of like witness all this. But it did kind of ignite a passion for like storytelling and things like that, I will say.
Okay. So what was the moment that you thought, okay, I need to be a journalist?
It actually was when I became pregnant with my first son in 2011. I was living in Los Angeles. I came back to New York to start a family and was kind of like had honestly like no other skills. Like what I went to school for wasn't in line with now what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to tell stories. I didn't know how I wanted to tell them. And then kind of feeling like I can kind of marry my personal passions, which was, now becoming a mother, with my professional ones. And I started again, like kind of in the early days of blogging. I wasn't a blogger for myself, but blogging for like companies and just starting out very like boots on the ground, whoever wants to hire me. I think I got my first journalism gig off of Craigslist, which is like blogging for a mom's like what to do, where to go in the city type thing. And then just from there, it really felt like I was like catapulted into this industry as a parenting journalist, as a lifestyle journalist. And I just like I have looked back, but not as like, I'm very excited and pleased with how my career has gone since then.
And you've shared that your father always knew that you had some sort of penchant for journalism and that you should be a journalist.
Yeah, I mean, we did like this massive college tour as like one does, right? When you're like a junior in high school, and we traveled upstate, we saw a bunch of colleges, and one of the colleges on our list was Syracuse. And I didn't express any interest in journalism or writing at that point, but they have this incredible journalism program called Newhouse. On the tour, you sit behind a news desk, and I did that. And he expressed to me that this is really how he envisioned me. And I'd always stuck with me. He never pushed, he's not like that. And this is how it kind of goes, I think, with me in particular. I'm sure with a lot of other people, like it takes a very roundabout way to like kind of get the lesson. So
I feel that.
Yeah. So if I had kind of just listened to my father and like pursued at that age at like, going to college for it right away, who knows where I'd be. Again, I mentioned I have no regrets really about the way that my career has gone. I'm very fortunate and with how everything's sort of played out. But I'm like always kind of like, oh, who knows? Who knows if I got a 4-year like or more jump.
But let's talk about it. If our parents were recommending it, we weren't doing it.
No, and I'm an only child, born and raised in New York City. Like I was I don't want to say rebellious. I wasn't a bad kid, but pretty much like you said, like if they were telling me to do it, I was going to do the opposite.
It's so funny. I have to share this. So I was born in New York City, but grew up in Southern California in Laguna. And I remember one of my first sort of experiences seeing teenagers in New York City was that movie Kids.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Isn't that terrible? So I had this idea like, oh my gosh, these kids are like, they're so much more advanced than everyone else. And so I was like, whoa, what is this place where everyone is like so grown up and their parents don't know where they are and they don't really care. So I had this idea that everyone in New York City was already like leagues ahead and rebellious and like doing adult things.
You do grow up a little bit faster, I think, in New York, especially before cell phones.
My gosh, before cell phones.
Yeah.
We're like the last generation that knows what it was like to not have a cell phone as a child.
I would freak out if my now 12-year-old was out, even where I live now in Long Island. If I couldn't track him every minute, I would absolutely lose my mind. And my parents just let me out in the streets of Manhattan with no way of getting a hold of me or where I was or anything like that.
It's remarkable that there was that sort of trust back then. Yeah. Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
I think we trusted people more back then. And now it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, and now there's all the things. There's the strangers, there's the tricky people. There are all the things.
Right.
So what is one thing motherhood's taught you?
Motherhood has definitely taught me quite a bit. Again, this Humans of New York Instagram, he does these kind of like long, like 6-part photo series where we're learning about these people's lives. And there was this one photo from many years ago that he took where he asked the gentleman, what are your dreams for your child? And he goes, we let him dream for himself. And I think that has always stood out to me as kind of like the kind of parent that I want to be. Certainly you want to guide your children and teach them right from wrong and impart all your wisdom and knowledge and love onto them. But essentially you're raising a person who's already whole, who already has come into this world with their own hopes and dreams, even as a young person. So I think really what motherhood has taught me is like to be so accepting and open of my children exactly how they are. And we know as parents, like that can change from day to day, minute to minute.
Minute to minute.
Right. So just really kind of to be patient and really just like meet them where they're at and to be flexible within that as well.
So looking back, what has parenthood taught you about the relationship or changed your experience in your relationship with your parents?
A lot of unmasking happens, like when we become a mother. I'll specifically talk about that because they say like these traumas or these lessons or whatever it is, they are like generational, right? So any kind of emotional wounds that I was harboring from like my own parents who, did their best, it becomes so revealed in motherhood. So what I've learned really is that, yes, my parents were absolutely doing their best, and whatever I might have inherited from that, I can work on. But it's also going to be really reflected to me with my own kids and in different ways. I have two boys. And so I am, just to use this kind of buzzword, triggered by them in different ways. And it's important for me to recognize that and address that so that these cycles don't repeat. So I think the biggest lesson that I've learned about being a mother and how it sort of reflected back to my own parents is that, yeah, like we're all doing our best, but like I want to take it a step further. Talk about like, we use all these kind of like therapy terms now and all of that. And I think it's great, to be honest. I think like understanding the mental and emotional needs of our children now, I think we're probably the first generation of parents to really, really lean into that. And so I am fully leaning into it. I'm looking back at my parents and looking forward at my own children, but really just like the best thing I can do is work on myself.
I feel that all the time. And personally, when I work on myself, I'm also more grounded and happier. And I'm able to show up for my family in a way that I probably wouldn't have before. And it's interesting because I now understand my parents so much more because of that. Because I don't feel like there was a whole lot of communication, especially around feelings. I was an only child till I was 9. So in a lot of ways, I remember thinking, I have to exceed the expectation and I've got to, impress my parents, and I have to do things in a certain way. And then everything that I want to rebel against, I have to like not let them find out about, right? Like it was like this weird thing, but we didn't talk about it. I definitely remember not crying ever. Like if I was upset or anything like that, that was just inappropriate. You don't do that publicly. Like all of the things. And yes, that was very helpful in my first few years in working. But beyond that, I think that I had a lot of stuff I had to work on later. Right.
It's like a constant journey. And I think I'll say it again, like I do believe we're the first kind of generation who are open to like working on ourselves. What does it mean to raise emotionally intelligent children? Or in my case, emotionally intelligent boys who aren't told like that, being a man is not crying and being tough, so this is the first time I think parents have really had to kind of think about this, and not just think about it, like be open to it too. I think there was not even a willingness to discuss it in the past or think about it or anything like that. And the whole conversations, there's a huge shift. I do believe that.
And I don't know if this generation is just more intelligent or we are prepping them with all the things so they have all of the resources, but I feel like they are actually quite easy to communicate with. I'm not saying all of the time.
Right.
But like really, it's interesting how it comes back. Like I might say something and I don't think I'm being heard. And then I'm like, okay. And sometimes I have to say it 5 times, which kills me. But sometimes it comes back and I was like, wow, you were actually listening?
Yeah.
Like that's a shocking thing for me. You do a lot of things with reporting in the motherhood space, right? And what it's like to be a mom, and you're talking to, public figures and celebrities that are moms and right?
Yeah.
So like what's something that you've learned along the way that you've started practicing that you want to share?
I started out as like a parenting journalist, right? Where I was really focusing on like child raising and trends and like research and things like that, and really leaning into the parenting. And now where my sort of professional and, personal life has gone is really a little bit inward into like that motherhood journey, which I do think is a little bit different because it's almost like a little bit of a separation, right? So like earlier on in my career, in my life, as my kids were younger, was all about my children. But then I was like, oh, shoot, like, wait. Like, wait, I'm still here. I have passions and dreams and desires and like major ambition. And that didn't go away when I became a mom. In fact, it was like the opposite. I didn't know what I wanted to do or what direction my life was going to take before I became a mother. And when I became a mother, I was like, all right, here we go. Motherhood, career, boom, at the same time. So what I like to talk about right now and really kind of impart in my podcast and in my books and like even in my everyday work is just like a message of you can start where you're at. Ambition is not a dirty word if you're a mother. You can, not that you can do it all, but that you can raise beautiful, healthy, emotionally available children and still make time to pursue your own passions. What I also love to say is that like my kids light up when I talk about my work and what I do. They don't feel like I've, kind of neglected or abandoned them, and it is, again, this word of like balance is again something we're all figuring out. But I do think that the more present and fulfilled I am professionally, the better mom I am for them because my cup is full in numerous ways, right? My many cups, I try to fill them all so that I can be that mom for them. So I would say that that's sort of like the biggest lesson is like, don't be afraid to go beyond that normal self-care of manicures and pedicures and like invest in your business, invest in another business, go apply for the job you don't think you're qualified for. That really is like my message to mothers, and I fully stand behind that.
So don't be afraid to fail. Just do it.
Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to start, because I think we do get really wrapped up in the idea, well, my kids are young, they need me. I don't know, like, or I don't know even how to jump back into maybe like the private sector or you can really list off millions of reasons why you shouldn't do something. But if there is like a flame, a desire burning inside of you, maybe it's to write that book, to start that podcast, anything like that, I would really encourage women to just start. Mel Robbins says this all the time. Just start. You don't have to be ready. If you start, it will come. Like that kind of like build it, they will come mentality. I really do believe that, especially for moms.
That's very secret oriented too. Remember that book?
I do. Ask, believe, receive. Yeah, we love that. I love The Secret.
And I love Mel Robbins.
Yes.
So I have so many questions for you. First and foremost, one of the things I remember is in your book, Like a Mother, you talked about how you've succeeded so much. And in your personal life, although your relationship was initially a success, you failed hard, but then you are now in a place where it is thriving again. Can you share a little bit about what happened? What is that?
Yeah, I can. I would love to, but when I read this question when we prepped, I was so nervous by it, but there's nothing really to be nervous about. My husband and I met when we were 18 years old. I'm about to be 40. It's 22, almost 22 years in. Yeah, there's going to be some significant ups and downs. We dated as teenagers. We dated as young adults. We had babies before we got married. And then you kind of just like figure it all out. So there were makeups and breakups along the way. We, separations while the kids were born, but never like stray too far from each other. All these like cliche things, like who is the one you want to walk through like the who right? Who is the person that you choose over and over again, no matter what. Like I wake up every morning choosing my husband, and there were times when we were apart and I still chose him because my heart always went back to it. And so my husband and our relationship, it comes with a ton of baggage because we were 18. We didn't just like meet at 18, happily fall in love. I went to college. He was in the Marine Corps. Like it was a lot of distance, a lot of, feelings of betrayal when maybe it was real or not. Like, so working through that and understanding the past has to stay in the past. And like also just kind of meeting each other where we are now. My husband's really good at that like therapy talk, surprisingly. And I find that as like a big gift. He's definitely more emotionally available than I am. So he's so willing and open to have these conversations. And sometimes I'm the one that's shutting it down. There's no real like detail that I think I can get into that would like really matter in this way, except to say that it's been a 22-year relationship that started when we were teenagers. I think that kind of says it all.
You grew up together.
Yeah. There's been, like I said, significant ups and downs, 2 kids, and we figure it out every day.
Life is hard, right? Yeah. I mean, it is so hard. And I remember people would say, well, a marriage is work. And I couldn't see that. You don't know until you're in it.
Right.
And a relationship, a marriage, it doesn't have to be a marriage, right? Like any partnership is work.
And we love our work. Like I do believe relationships are work, but I would take the kind of negative connotation out of that.
True. And when I say work, I actually do appreciate work. I think at this point I realize that a relationship is effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you meet someone initially later, right? Like I had the relationships, it was so effortless. So I was like, oh, this is so right. And so when the things started happening in the relationship, like fertility, challenges, trying to figure out career shifts and moves and the pandemic, like things got real and you just find a way. So that's beautiful that you grew together because some people give up.
Yeah. And definitely that was on the table a lot of the times, but it never worked for us that way. And so I think just like how people ask me all the time about like, parenting, like what's like your biggest piece of parenting advice? And I always say, oh, prioritize and reprioritize. Like, don't be afraid to pivot in a moment with your kids. Like how I just said, meeting them where they are minute to minute. I think that's true in relationships. Like, we are in a relationship with a partner whose needs, you want to fulfill while fulfilling your own. And those change over time in career shifts, kid issues, fertility issue, whatever life throws at you. You're going through it and your partner's going through it and you go through it together, but you also have to leave space for people to kind of go through it on their own. And then how do you want to figure it out as a couple or as a unit? And I think it just takes a lot of conversations, a lot of prioritizing and reprioritizing, figuring out what, who needs more in what moment and stuff like that. And I would say that it is something we do every day. And I just feel fortunate through the good and the bad, or however you want to call it, that I do have a partner who's willing to have those conversations, who's willing to be emotionally available through the good and the bad and all of the other stuff in between.
And that is so incredible, being that you met at 18. You didn't have the chance to talk about all of the things, like to say, oh, well, this is what I want in life and this is what I'm looking for, because you were figuring it out.
Yeah.
Are there any parenting hacks you have found through knowing your husband for, you said 22 years?
Yeah.
You said prioritize. What's a hack, or what does that look like?
Well, I don't know if it's so much as a hack, but my husband and I, we really do lean into our traditional roles. I'm more nurturing, I'm more forgiving, I'm more like, who needs a hug? And he does, now that our boys are older, they do need kind of like a real masculine figure in our home. That's what our boys need. They need to see somebody who traditionally masculine and now maybe like a little bit non-traditional. My husband does all the cooking. I do not cook, so, but they need to see him, as this really kind of masculine figure in our house. So for us, leaning into those roles really helps. Again, I'm not sure it's a hack necessarily. I love, prep the night before. That's like my big hack, whatever you can do the night, because that's like a more traditional hack, because my kids are horrendous in the mornings. Or even this morning, I'm like, oh my God, why am I dragging you out of bed, literally? But so traditional hack, yeah, prep everything the night before, do everything the night before, pack the backpack, lay the clothes out, the lunches, everything happens the night before. We are a night family, not a morning family, but on a larger kind of bigger scale. Yeah, like it helps if your kids know what they can go to one parent for and know what they can go to the other parent for. They can come to me for nurturing, love, silliness, and my husband's silly too, but they're going to him for more like the masculine kind of stuff, the more encouragement, the lessons, the rough housing. And so that's really what helps us.
You mentioned that your husband does the laundry.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And you're the packer the night before.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody has roles to do, but they're non-traditional, which I think is amazing. It leans very much into Eve Rodsky's fair play. In my household, my husband does all of the laundry.
Yeah.
And I said your husband does the cooking, right?
Yeah, he does cooking. It's funny. I didn't say laundry, but he does do all the laundry.
Okay. You've got these roles that are non-traditional. And do you feel like that is empowering your boys to be more aware and better partners later on in their own relationships?
Absolutely. And I think regardless of what kind of relationship they get into later on, what I think the biggest thing I would like to teach them, and my husband, and I think I'm a little bit more intentional with it, where my husband's just like, yeah, I'm just doing the freaking laundry, like relax. But what I want to see them is really teach my kids ownership. I want them to teach them like autonomy for themselves and autonomy in their space. yes, we pay the mortgage on this house. You are our children, but there's 4 people that live here. So we all have a part to play. And that is really the biggest thing I want to teach them. The roles are whatever they are. Or this is what works for us, right? Me leaning more into that feminine role and my husband more into a masculine role, even though he does laundry and cooking, whatever. But what I'm hoping to really impart by them watching my husband do laundry, cook, and but was that we all have a part to play. So however they end up growing into the young men that they grow into, like they will come into any situation, work, a roommate situation, a romantic relationship, knowing with something to contribute, not expecting like things to just happen for them. And I did lean into that a lot after reading Eve Rodsky's book.
Her book is incredible.
Yeah.
Her story is amazing. So you were diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic at 18?
17.
17. Yeah. What was that realization like? How did that change your lifestyle? And how does that impact you today?
Yeah, it was such a crazy time because with a disease like type 1 diabetes, you're actually quite sick for a long time, not really knowing, right? Like I was 17, I was losing a lot of weight. I was having, frequent urination, like so hungry. So like a lot of these kind of symptoms, they could be like, oh, you're a growing teenager, right? Like, sleeping, like the way I was I was getting leg cramps and it sort of just ends up I was undiagnosed for 2 months and the symptoms just get worse and worse. So it's a huge lifestyle shift because like you go from like being able to kind of eat, drink, do whatever you want to having to understand every sort of thing you're putting in your body, like, counting carbs, dosing insulin, all of that. And so, and at a very pivotal age, like as a senior in high school at 17. And I think it was a huge part of my decision to kind of like stay home for college, stay close to home, stay close to my parents. But that was in 2002. So again, I've had children and managing diabetes while you're pregnant, at managing diabetes while taking care of other people like my children. And so it is like, it's a huge shift. Thankfully, my health care and the technology, the medical technology that I rely on makes my life vastly easier, makes this disease much easier to manage. Even when I was first diagnosed, like I wear 2 devices. One monitors my blood sugar, the other manages my insulin based on what my blood sugar machine's telling it. So it's very almost seamless. I mean, it's still there. It's something I always think about, but thank goodness for this technology.
And has that technology always been, or is that a newer thing in the most
Well, I mean, I
recent
think
decade?
it's definitely evolved, but it is getting better and better every day. Like I mentioned, I have it's called a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor that monitors my blood sugars 24 hours a day. And then I have an insulin pump that I wear that connects to the continuous glucose monitor and will automatically adjust my insulin levels based on my blood sugar. So give me more or less based on what I need at that moment. And I don't even know. So it allows me to kind of feel grateful and comfortable and kind of almost like we're delegating that part of my life to technology so where I can focus on being here with you or, like.
That's amazing. Okay, so what are some of the lifestyle changes that you've had to adjust because of type 1 diabetes? And I know people talk about diabetes, but it's so blanketed that I'd love for listeners to understand what the disease actually encompasses for type 1, because I don't think people realize there's type 2, which can happen over time, right? It can be associated with diet and obesity and such. I don't think people really understand type 1 as much. And I'd love for you to sort of demystify what that means.
Sure. So type 1 diabetes is also known as juvenile diabetes because it happens earlier in your life, although that is not actually the case anymore. People are getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at any age, which is, I think, kind of turning like the medical community a little bit on its head. Like they're trying to understand why this is happening. Diabetes is not run in my family. They're not sure what brought mine on necessarily, but essentially your pancreas just stops working. It stops producing insulin, which is the hormone that you need to digest and process sugars in your body. So if that doesn't happen, then you give yourself injections with insulin so that you can process carbohydrates, sugar, all of that. And as far as, lifestyles changes beyond, monitoring what I eat, not eating carbs. People are always like sugar, sugar, sugar. Yes, like no, I don't eat candy, but there's carbohydrates and potatoes, french fries, pasta, like so beyond like what you might think a normal like diabetic diet is. So always just have to kind of know what you're eating. And then a lot of it is like hormonal too, like understanding that as a woman too, your hormonal changes as like monthly, like not just like being on your period, but any kind of stage within your like hormonal cycle will affect your blood sugars, your energy levels. And with diabetes, sometimes there are other conditions that come along with it. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism with my pregnancy, and probably most likely because I was a type 1 diabetic. So I deal with that now too. So just kind of understanding, like, for me at least, it's beyond like the normal exhaustion of just like being a working mom with 2 kids. There is a layer of I really need to take care of my body or it can break down. So really prioritizing sleep, staying hydrated, and trying to eat as healthy as possible. I will indulge in desserts and like alcohol every once in a while, but I have to be really careful because it just will throw me off completely. And I think the biggest thing that I struggle with beyond like blood sugar stuff is the exhaustion. Not realizing that my body is working like has to work twice as hard. I'm injecting like a foreign substance into my body almost 24 hours a day that it has to process. Like, so just understanding that there's a lot more at play.
So, what would you say to a parent of a child who was just diagnosed?
I love this question. And I am close with a woman called Nicole Pearl Kaplan, who's a huge juvenile diabetes advocate because her son Rex has type 1 diabetes. And she and I connected. And I don't know a ton of diabetics, but I've been connecting with mothers of diabetics given like what I do. And what I would tell any mother with a newly diagnosed child with diabetes or anything is to find your community first. Of course, make sure your kid's good, get all the medical information that you need, talk to your doctors, do your research, but then almost immediately just go dive into a community because there's going to be so many things that you didn't know that you needed or things that are specific to your child that maybe only one or two other families have experienced, and you can find that in those communities. And because motherhood, I say this a lot too, it is quite isolating, even though you feel like you have someone with you all that you're never really alone, right? You're always thinking for yourself and for your kids. I find it quite isolating, honestly. And so when you're dealing with a child with any kind of illness or diagnosis, you kind of it's a little bit more isolating, and it shouldn't. So I think diving into a community, they're easy to find on Facebook, they're easy to find on Instagram now. If anyone's listening and doesn't know where to go, please reach out to me. You can slide into my DMs because it is so important, and it's scary. And there are other people out there that want to support you who you might never ever meet in real life.
I'm curious to know, in your family at home, does your diabetes sort of impact any of your activities with your family, and or has it created any sort of heightened empathy on the part of your kids because of them seeing what you're going through and they love you so much?
Right. So first of all, no. I mean, like I say that meant to be like a little like funny because your kids, they see you as you, and they don't
know different.
They're too young, I think, to really understand like empathy for chronic illness when it comes to their mother. I think a classmate, sure, but they're like, yeah, mom, like, like we get it. Yeah, okay, you have to do this. Like but I think it's more of an understanding. They understand that I have to do certain things, like with my medication, I mentioned I have this insulin pump is attached to me, and then it's like another kind of device that looks like a phone, and they know what it is. They know what's important. They know they can't mess with it, and they know to bring it to me if I ask, or like where to find it, what it looks like, all of that. So I think it creates more of an awareness than an empathy for my kids, at least. My kids aren't like, poor mom. And they're like, why are you so exhausted? We need you. I have a homework due tomorrow. Or like whatever. Like they don't care, but they're just not thinking in those terms. But definitely an awareness and like intelligence around like chronic illness because they see me deal with it. I don't think they've had to experience it with any other person their age, diabetes or any other kind of chronic illness. But I think my kids wouldn't be scared if they were to see a child in their classroom inject themselves with insulin or have to give themselves some kind of medicine or anything like that. I don't think my kids would be the ones to be like, oh, what, like they would be like, yeah, okay. like, because they see it so much. And so that really is, I guess, the one of the biggest gifts I can give them from having this condition is that, like, they'll be a little bit jaded by it, which I think is good.
It does sound like they are very comfortable
Yeah.
with chronic illness. So that is a good thing. Although also extra exhausting
Yeah.
is how I'm feeling, like listening to like how tired you must feel sometimes, but you have to like work through the homework and oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
that is like
But if I'm
so
taking care of
hard.
myself, then we're usually really good. But yeah, they're definitely not at the age or like the emotional level where they can kind of understand, like, I need to lay down because my blood sugars were crazy all night. They just don't get that. They want mom like in the moment.
That's hard.
You're right. Actually, good if I could just say one thing, because I don't know when this is going to air, but I don't know. Hoda Kotb recently announced she was leaving the Today Show. And I was listening to an interview of her on Jimmy Fallon. And she was like telling her girls, guess what? Mommy's going to get to walk you to school. Like, isn't that great? Like, mommy's leaving work and going to get to walk you to school. And they're like, tomorrow, Wednesday, like Thursday. She kept like, no, not till like January or February. And they're like, oh, like, why'd you even tell us? Like, kids are so in the moment. Like, and that, I was like, that's my kid. My kids are exactly like that. They only want to know something if it's happening, could affect them like right now. Don't tell me about, anything else. I thought that was hilarious.
But this is true because you're
Yeah.
saying that and it's very relatable.
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay, so I wanted to go deeper on
Yeah.
all the topics with you first before I asked you the question. Knowing what you know now, what would you do all over again?
And even though I knew this was coming, it is just such a hard question because it's like, what would I do all over again? And I think when I initially thought about this, I was like, oh yeah, I would gone to listen to my dad and gone to journalism school. But what I really think I would do all over again is live my life the way I had lived it within the same timeline, but really be a lot nicer to myself, emotionally, physically, understanding that I think, women, for whatever reason, and me in particular, carry a lot of shame. I carried shame around my disease. I carried shame around my not being right out of college and into journalism. I felt older and I was older and pregnant. So I think for a long time I felt like unworthy. I felt, again, I carried so much shame. And I think I would kind of do everything for the most part the same, but like release all of that. And that's like a big thing to say because we can always look back and say that, right? Like, yeah, I should have applied to Syracuse Newhouse School of Journalism. Maybe I would have had my own talk show by now. But
It's not too late,
Not
right?
too
We
late.
talked about that.
Right. So there's that. But then ultimately, like in the bigger picture, is like you spend so much time like feeling unworthy and embarrassed and ashamed of stuff that sometimes you can't even control. So I would like to not only like do that all over again, but like right now from this moment and forward, I'm turning 40 in December. Like no more of that, please. No more.
Isn't it interesting how women carry this burden of shame?
Yes.
And so much of the time it's not anything that we could have done differently,
Yes.
but yet we have all this bargaining anyway. I find that all of the time.
All of the time. And it's really unfortunate. And I would love to see that change. And I think I'm hopeful that there will be a change in that. I think like women are really I'm seeing them taking a lot of, not that they never took ownership, because that's ridiculous, but like making more demands of their partners, of them, of society, of their work, of all of this to serve themselves. Like finally. So like, I just want to keep seeing that.
Yes, 1,000% yes to that. And I noticed that as I'm getting more mature, because I don't feel older, I feel like there are so many things that I carried a burden of shame that were exhausting
Mhm.
that I simply just gave up interest and energy to carry anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I actually found let's be honest, the right therapist to help me get through that. But it's so interesting how societally as women, there's so much people pleasing.
Mhm.
I'm finding this actually, the more and more I speak with men about it, is that they carry that. They just carry it differently.
Okay.
But I do find that the shame element is rampant because I think we were raised as women with this sort of conditioning that you're supposed to do all the things, be all the things, and be amazing all of the time. And it's just not real. Like, yes, you can do anything, but it doesn't always have to be like right now. When you think about your shame, Like, is it something you said you are looking to release it in this new decade? What are you doing? Are you going to go to some fun like happy retreat? Like, what are you
No, I
doing?
don't think, I think I know enough, right? Like, cause my years in therapy and reading about it and just wanting it. But I do think what I think is really the best thing for me and perhaps for other women is to have conversations like this, quite honestly, to kind of like seek out other women, other men, like you said, or just to kind of talk about it. You know, there's so much like destigmatization that I think needs to happen. And the more we talk about it, the less scary it feels. It's very, again, very cliche. People talk about this all the time, but the more that I share and can connect with other people about these topics, the better I feel to like kind of like go out into the world. And of course, and it's kind of, I don't want to say unfortunate, but it, you know, yeah, I had it like, it takes turning 40 to kind of like finally just be like, screw all that. Like I'm living for myself now. So I think it, you know, definitely something that is learned. It comes with experience, but conversations in person, on podcasts, listening to podcasts, connecting with people on social media is actually a huge way of doing that for me.
I mean, can you imagine if we got back all of those like many hours of days of years where we felt that burden of shame,
Yeah.
like what we could have done instead with that energy?
Right. And actually, if I could say one more thing that I read, because I love bringing in, you know, other people that I admire. I read, you know, Jennifer Lopez. I don't know if you love her or hate her. I've been a longtime fan. She just did an interview with Interview Magazine. Nikki Glaser interviewed her, and she expressed, you know, that she knows that everybody thinks about her. She's like this chronic relation, always in relationship after relationship, you know, this whatever, and they always end up kind of like blowing up in her face, and she's like, well, and she's like, and I still accomplished whatever I accomplished with all that kind of baggage. Now imagine me now being free, like what I'm about to do. And I think, again, whatever you feel about Jennifer Lopez is actually irrelevant. Like, I think free yourself of whatever it is that might be holding you back, a relationship, your own inner like self-talk, your doubts, and try working towards a feeling of freedom so that you can serve yourself and your passions and subsequently serve the world.
It's true. And also, you know, release yourself from what others might think about you because I'm learning. You read the 4 agreements?
Yes. Well, I haven't read it, but yes, like make impeccable with your word, that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't take things personally.
Okay.
So a lot of the times that the people who are the most judgmental are the most judgmental to themselves and have their own stuff. Don't take things personally. So I love that about her because she's freeing herself of all this stuff. And honestly, does she care about what other people think? She shouldn't because it's their own stuff anyway. So if there was a modality to share one thing with every mother in the world, what would you say?
If I could just share with mothers is to, again, to kind of free yourself from whatever's holding you back, find your community and get started.
I love that. Bethany, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so grateful that we get this opportunity to speak and to share in so many topics that I think people should be talking about, and hopefully as a result of our conversation will.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.